Um, Welcome to the deep dive. We are looking at a pretty massive stack of world-building documents today.
Yeah, it's quite the pile of geopolitical analyses and socioeconomic breakdowns.
Right. And it all outlines this incredibly detailed alternate reality known as Earth-6.
Which is fascinating because if you follow any kind of alternate history, you know that the point of divergence is really everything.
Exactly. Like in our world, the mid-20th century was entirely defined by things like the Cold War.
Powerful plan.
Yeah, the Marshall Plan, the nuclear standoff, all of that. But the sources we have today for Earth-6 detail a timeline where literally none of that happened.
None of it. We are examining a world where conventional nation-states just completely collapsed.
And they were replaced by 6 major continental empires, all ruled by superpowered entities.
Right.
So our mission for this deep dive is to rigorously analyze these 6 empires as they exist in the Earth-6 year of 2026.
We're going to look under the hood of their economies, their militaries.
Their societal structure, all of it. And by the end of this, we are going to compare their strengths and weaknesses to figure out which system actually functions best for its citizens.
And we'll make a definitive choice about where we'd actually want to live.
Right, where you listening, myself, and our expert here would realistically want to set up shop.
The sheer volume of logistical data we have to unpack here is just remarkable.
It really is.
Because Earth-6 provides this fascinating lens into what happens when you introduce superhuman variables into global infrastructure.
But to understand the year 2026 in this reality, we have to go back. We have to look at their immediate post-World War II environment.
Right, the point of divergence. It hinges on an international policy ratified by the surviving governments, which the text referred to as the Darwin Doctrine.
The Darwin Doctrine, just the name alone is heavy.
It is. The documents state that in the wake of all that global devastation, governments explicitly refused reconstruction aid.
They just said no.
Exactly. They chose a policy of state-sponsored abandonment. And the stated rationale in these files was literally to temper the surviving human population through hardship.
Which is just brutal. And the immediate practical result of that policy was mass radicalization.
Unsurprisingly.
Right. The populations didn't just quietly endure the hardship. The trauma actually catalyzed the emergence of individuals with extraordinary abilities.
Documented in the lore as metas.
Yeah, metas. And these enhanced humans, they viewed the traditional governments as completely obsolete.
And antagonistic.
Exactly. That friction ignited what the documents call the authority wars.
Which was a 13-year global conflict.
13 years of superpowered militants systematically dismantling conventional nation-states.
Borders dissolved entirely.
Yeah.
It was a complete restructuring of global hegemony.
And out of that 13-year vacuum, specific superhuman figures started consolidating entire continents.
Like Zakaria Fedor.
Right. She's a massive anchor point in the history text. She unified the fractured African states into a single authority.
Which really demonstrated to the rest of the world that meta-led governance was structurally viable.
And that blueprint was quickly adopted everywhere else. It led to the formation of Europa, Pan-Asia, the Pan-Americas.
We're essentially talking about the death of the nation-state and the birth of the continental meta-empire.
Now, the history texts do show they attempted a unified global peace early on.
They had world meetings focused on demilitarization.
But trust was just non-existent. The second meeting fractured completely when a Prime Universe variant of Zakaria Fedor actually attacked the assembly.
Which sparked the Second Authority War.
Right. And that conflict was characterized by targeted assassinations, drone warfare. It eventually claimed Zakara herself.
And the really wild part is that the only reason the fighting stopped was an external threat.
A rogue AI satellite named Valkyrie invaded.
It literally forced the empires into a localized ceasefire in Panama just to neutralize the AI.
Which brings us to the geopolitical landscape of their present day. The era from roughly 1963 to 2026 is officially labeled the Age of Pax.
But if you analyze the border deployments and the trade embargoes, it is functionally a cold peace.
Yeah, no single continent possesses the operational capacity to conquer the others.
Yet none of them are willing to disarm.
So the original unifying champions have largely withdrawn, leaving behind these sprawling bureaucratic systems.
Sustained by treaties, emergency powers, and the perpetual threat of mutual destruction.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start dissecting these empires, beginning in the Western Hemisphere with the American Union.
The American Union controls roughly a third of the Earth's land area.
Spanning both the northern and western hemispheres. And its entire governmental structure is based on a unilateral decree called the Rule of Two.
The rule of two.
I saw this term all over the union documents, and the mechanics of it are absolutely fascinating. What exactly does this decree mandate?
It dictates that exactly two superhuman champions must hold absolute executive, legislative, and military authority over the entire Union.
Just two people.
Just two. Currently, those figures are Adam the Atom and Anthony Garr, who is also known as the Great Lakes Avenger.
Right. But what we need to examine here is not just their titles, it's their function. They act as literal public utilities.
Exactly. Adam the Atom is connected to the quantum field. The physics described in the lore indicate he can manipulate infinite amounts of energy and matter.
Logistically, he is the power grid.
He is. Every industrial sector, every residential zone, every agricultural facility in the American Union draws power directly from his generation capabilities.
Which is hard to wrap your head around. Imagine your local utility company being entirely replaced by a single guy tapping into a quantum dimension.
It provides the Union with infinite, sustainable, and entirely free energy.
Free energy, and then you pair that with Anthony Garr.
The Great Lakes Avenger.
Right. The files note he was born at the bottom of Lake Superior and functions as an omega-level hydrokinetic.
He doesn't just control water. He regulates the macro weather patterns.
He ensures optimal irrigation for all crop cycles. He alters oceanic tides to favor American commercial shipping.
He even purifies the continental drinking water at the molecular level.
So on paper, it reads like a post-scarcity utopia when it comes to fundamental resources.
On paper, yes. But if we look at the socioeconomic data, the reality of distribution reveals a highly transactional system.
Here's the catch.
The Union does not provide these infinite resources as a fundamental human right.
No, they don't. Citizens receive grid access and purified water strictly on the condition of maintaining a high congressional social score.
The infrastructure is entirely weaponized.
If your social score drops because of, say, political dissent,
Or poor economic output,
or even associating with flagged individuals, your access is severed.
you are suddenly off the grid in a society that doesn't have secondary power plants.
Or independent water treatment facilities, because Adam and Anthony rendered them obsolete decades ago.
So you have to procure alternative survival means entirely on your own.
It creates a massively self-policing populace.
It does. The logistical efficiency of having two entities manage the entire hemisphere's resources also creates a single catastrophic point of failure.
We will definitely come back to that later.
But the immediate effect is absolute behavioral compliance.
Although that compliance is heavily strained by a severe internal cultural fracture.
Regarding genetics,
Right. The demographics of the American Union are sharply divided between true bloods and mutants.
the sociological documents outline a deep-seated biological bigotry here.
True bloods being superhumans who gain their abilities through cosmic events, lab accidents, or lineage.
They hold the systemic power, and they view their abilities as earned or ordained.
Whereas they view the X gene, which is what creates mutants, as a biological taint.
It isn't just prejudice. It actively shapes their modern history through the Mount Rushmore massacre.
The statistics from that event are staggering. It fundamentally altered the labor pool and the societal structure of the Union.
True blood elites clashed with mutant civil rights groups.
And over 16 million mutants were killed.
16 million. And another million were biologically depowered.
The resulting psychological and societal shock actually triggered a biological cessation,
The demographic chart shows 0 new mutant births in the Union since the massacre.
which is a terrifying biological response to trauma. So to manage a society with that level of foundational horror and a conditional utility grid, the propaganda arm has to be working overtime.
Which brings us to Quintus Nightfall.
Yes, he's the CEO of PA Financial, a third-generation billionaire. What stands out to you about his role in this superhuman oligarchy?
His utility lies entirely in his genetics. He is a baseline human.
He has no X gene, no true blood enhancements.
None. But in a system ruled by physical gods, Nightfall serves as the necessary interface for the billions of baseline humans driving the economy.
The superclass views him as a disposable middleman,
And the human population views him as a collaborator.
but he manages the optics perfectly. He ensures the human workforce continues to produce the physical goods and services that even infinite quantum energy cannot manifest out of thin air.
Because energy isn't a finished product. You still need human labor.
Exactly. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. While the northern half of the Union deals with social scores and genetic purges, the southern half operates completely differently.
The documents classify South America as a rogue nation existing within the Union's borders.
And their autonomy is entirely dependent on their monopoly over a very specific material called aetherium.
The material science reports on aetherium explain its geopolitical leverage. It is derived from a 15th century anomalous meteorite strike.
And the properties are wild. Aetherium perfectly absorbs, stores, and releases kinetic energy.
The physics applications are staggering. In infrastructure, it basically eliminates structural degradation from vibration.
Earthquakes wouldn't matter.
Right. In transportation, it creates near-perfect energy efficiency because momentum is conserved and redirected without loss.
And in military applications, it makes conventional firearms completely useless.
Think about it. You fire a bullet at an aetherium weave.
The fabric just absorbs the kinetic energy. The bullet drops to the floor. The wearer doesn't even feel the impact.
So South America capitalized on this by dominating the global black market.
They use digital anonymity to distribute aetherium-based tech worldwide.
Furthermore, they leveraged this technological independence to develop an agrarian powerhouse.
By combining aetherium's energy storage capabilities with advanced hydroponics, they produce biopharmaceutical crops at a yield 3 times the global average.
This economic independence allows them to maintain a highly isolationist, spiritually driven counterculture right in the middle of the American Union's authoritarian grid.
So you have rigid top-down control in the north, and this impenetrable aetherium-shielded agrarian state in the south.
And situated right on the fault line between these two powers is Panama.
The historical texts detail a pretty brutal reality for Panama during the authority wars.
It was stripped of copper and agricultural yields to fund the Union's war efforts.
And during the Second Authority War, the strategic value of the Panama Canal led to heavy militarization.
Coastal infrastructure was raised just to establish bunker networks.
But global trade logistics ultimately forced a diplomatic concession.
The continental empires finally recognized that endless proxy wars over the canal were economically unsustainable.
Therefore, Panama City was designated a sacrosanct, neutral diplomatic zone.
It's the one place free from the immediate jurisdiction of the continental empires.
It operates autonomously. The Union forces pulled back to their bases, leaving the local population to govern themselves.
It acts as a crucial release valve for global diplomacy.
A place where all these warring ideologies have to actually sit at a table. But moving east across the Atlantic, we hit an empire that operates on a completely inverted ideology regarding superhuman genetics,
The Separatist Union,
encompassing former Soviet territories, Germany, Italy, and Switzerland.
formerly titled the Empire of Evolution.
While the American Union purged its mutant population, the Separatist Union is governed entirely by a mutant minority party.
And at the apex of this structure is Omegadon,
The intelligence files characterize him as a 250-year-old entity.
who previously manipulated the Russian state apparatus before seizing continental control.
The governance model here is arguably the most literal interpretation of the Darwin doctrine on Earth-6.
Omegan enforces a system where strength is the absolute only recognized currency.
And this is institutionalized in a monthly event called the culling. How does this function logistically for the population?
What's fascinating here is how structured the violence is. The culling is a week-long state-mandated trial by combat held in the Coliseum of Power.
Baseline humans are systematically selected and forced to fight.
It serves a dual purpose. First, it violently suppresses any potential human uprisings by constantly eliminating the most capable fighters.
Right, taking out the strong before they can organize.
And second, it reinforces the state ideology that weakness is a capital offense.
Those who fail are eliminated. The texts specifically say they are washed away by the fires of Omegadon.
A process the state propaganda frames as an honorable release from biological inferiority.
It's a brutal filtration system, but there is a massive incentive structure built into this horror.
Yes, Omegan claims his genetic material seeded human evolution 150,000 years ago.
Whether that's historical fact or mythology, the biological reality is that he has the capability to alter human genetics.
If a baseline human survives the Colosseum, Omeganon can literally force the manifestation of the X gene in their DNA.
Granting them superhuman abilities.
This creates a really complex psychological dynamic within the populace.
Because instead of viewing the state as an absolute oppressor, a significant portion of the baseline population views the Colosseum as an opportunity for ascension.
It is a lethally high-stakes meritocracy.
And this ideology permeates their capital city, Sila, which is located in the region of Minchka.
The urban engineering of Sila is a statement in itself. The 5-mile city center is artificially maintained at exactly 70 degrees Fahrenheit year-round.
Regardless of the harsh external climate, it's a massive flex of energy and environmental control.
It serves as the diplomatic and military heart of the empire. Omegaddon commands the military, alongside 4 augmented generals known as the Tetrad.
When we analyze their military readiness, the numbers tell a story of just incredibly concentrated force.
Out of a total population of 75 million baseline humans and 15 million mutants, the active military consists of 5 million elite, genetically enhanced personnel.
5 million superhumans. The logistical cost of maintaining a standing army of that size and power is astronomical.
The texts note they live in opulence during their downtime, but they are subjected to punishing combat drills daily.
They're constantly probing the borders of the Asian coalition and Europa.
The state media constantly tells the citizens that they live in the most generous, secure nation on Earth, pointing to the power of their military.
But unless you are part of that 5 million strong elite strike force, you are just waiting for your turn in the Colosseum.
It's a society perpetually mobilized for conflict.
It relies entirely on external friction to maintain internal cohesion.
Because if the border skirmishes stopped, the aggressive energy of 5 million enhanced soldiers would inevitably turn inward.
They'd tear themselves apart. Now, if we look across their western border to Europa, we find an empire that has entirely sublimated raw physical brutality into complex technological aristocracy.
Europa is where the sociology gets incredibly nuanced. It is not ruled by a military junta or an energy-controlling god.
It is ruled by an aristocracy of genetically engineered post-humans who genuinely believe they are a separate, superior species,
And sitting at the top of this hierarchy is Dantalion, the immortal imperator.
whose origins completely upend the technological timeline of Earth-6.
Dantalion's presence introduces actual temporal mechanics into the geopolitical landscape.
The archives confirm he is a chrononaut from the 22nd century.
In his native timeline, he achieved absolute global hegemony, and by traveling back to the current era, he brought a century of technological advancement with him.
But his strategy is highly disciplined.
Very. Rather than deploying 22nd century technology en masse, which could destabilize the global economy and invite a unified strike from the other empires, he slowly drip-feeds these advancements to his scientific caste.
It allows Europa to maintain a constant, unassailable technological edge without triggering a massive arms race they couldn't control.
And the greatest testament to his technological superiority is the capital city itself, Olympus.
It is a mobile, soaring city that physically floats in the cloud layer.
And he constructed it using a material called titanium.
The mechanics of this metal are wild.
Titanium represents the synthesis of metallurgy and psionics. In its default state, it possesses the tensile strength and properties of standard industrial alloys.
But it is psychoactive.
Exactly. When engaged by a post-human with telepathic or psychokinetic abilities, the molecular bonds become fluid.
A psychic can command the metal to flow and reshape itself strictly through thought.
And once the psychic link is severed, the metal sets, achieving a hardness that rivals the most advanced military-grade alloys on the planet.
Dantalion used his own vast psychic power to literally mold Olympus out of titanium in a single afternoon.
It's the ultimate display of post-human capability.
And currently, about 30,000 baseline humans live up in this floating city serving the aristocracy.
They curate the museums, prepare the food, maintain the infrastructure.
Now, here is where I really struggle with the European data. The internal metrics show that the human population in Europa is the second happiest demographic on the planet.
This raises an important question.
Yeah, how is that possible in an absolute monarchy where they are legally classified as inferior pets?
We have to evaluate the material conditions being provided. The European nobility, figures like the governors of the Quarters Contessa Artemisia, Baron Salios, Duchess Vathmiel, and Prince Perseus, they are engaged in constant, lethal political maneuvering against one another.
Assassination is a recognized political tool for them.
But this violence is strictly contained within the aristocratic caste. For the baseline human population, the nobility provides absolute physical security
Clean nuclear energy.
and access to the most advanced educational and healthcare systems on Earth.
Right. You pay your taxes, you keep your head down, and you live a highly comfortable, secure life.
But we can't ignore the psychological variable.
No, we really can't, because the documents heavily suggest that this happiness index is artificial.
The aristocracy possesses widespread telepathic capabilities.
There are persistent indicators that the nobles use low-level psychic nudges across the population to suppress dissent and induce a state of docile contentment.
That is the critical logistical question regarding Europa. Are the citizens genuinely satisfied with trading their political autonomy for material luxury?
Or is their satisfaction a biologically enforced mandate?
Because if the nobility is actively rewriting the neurochemistry of millions of citizens to ensure compliance, Europa isn't a utopia.
It is a continent-sized psychological prison.
It's a profound operational difference from the American Union. The Americans enforce compliance through the threat of resource deprivation,
The Europans simply remove the cognitive desire to rebel.
which is incredibly efficient.
I would argue that losing your cognitive liberty is far more terrifying than losing your power grid. But if we are analyzing systems of control, we have to travel east and look at the Asian coalition.
This empire stretches from the Middle East, encompassing Iran and Saudi Arabia, all the way across Central Asia to the Pacific coast of China and Japan.
It is an absolute economic titan built on techno-authoritarianism.
The Asian coalition is centralized under the command of Basilius Autocrator Midas Montero.
Midas provides a masterclass in the weaponization of historical mythology.
Having seized control of an ancient secret society known as the Arjati, he propagates the belief that he is the literal reincarnation of Alexander the Great.
And he utilizes this narrative to legitimize his aggressive expansionism. It's not just propaganda. He backs it up with overwhelming, highly visible force.
The historical logs show he annexed China by killing their leadership in single combat.
Broadcast live on continental television.
He uses the Alexander mythos to bulldoze over thousands of years of distinct ethnic, linguistic, and religious identities.
Forcing a unified Greco-Persian Macedonian cultural overlay onto billions of people.
The capital, Alexandria Asiana, which is built over the ruins of Isfahan in Iran, is an architectural manifestation of this policy.
Blending classical antiquity with advanced structural engineering.
But the true foundation of his power is not mythology. It is the coalition's absolute monopoly on global manufacturing and advanced materials.
They control the shipyards, the semiconductor foundries, and the vast majority of the world's petrochemical reserves.
Their currency, the Nova, dictates global trade.
And their military dominance is secured by a material breakthrough called TQX7, or dark titanium.
The engineering files describe it as a quantum-bonded alloy integrated with carbon nanotubes and coated in programmable matter.
It makes their aerospace fleet, the Stymphalion, virtually untouchable in conventional engagements.
But to maintain a unified empire of that size, the internal surveillance apparatus has to be absolute.
Which is the domain of the Oculus Imperium, their central intelligence agency.
They have moved completely beyond reactionary law enforcement into predictive AI modeling.
The coalition tracks the biometric data, communication patterns, and consumption habits of every single citizen.
The algorithms process this data to identify dissidents and execute arrests before a crime or protest even occurs.
The psychological weight of living under an omniscient, predictive AI drastically alters human behavior.
It enforces a rigid, paranoid conformity.
You can't even have a dissenting thought without your heart rate or your digital footprint flagging you for extraction.
But in my reading of these sources, this absolute control is also their most glaring structural vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely. The entire apparatus, the military, the economy, the Oculus Imperium, is completely tethered to Midas's force of personality.
Precisely. Midas actively rotates his regional commanders, the heteroi, to prevent them from establishing localized power bases.
While this secures his immediate position, the geopolitical analysis clearly states that if Midas is eliminated, the coalition lacks a durable line of succession.
The suppressed national identities, the localized independence movements in the Middle East and East Asia, would violently reassert themselves.
The coalition is an economic juggernaut, perfectly balanced on the head of a pin.
It's an empire built on dark titanium and held together by one man's ego.
And the fallout of that collapse would be catastrophic for global trade, which brings us perfectly to an empire that relies entirely on that trade to survive.
Oceania.
This is the federated maritime civilization spanning Southeast Asia, India, Australia, and New Zealand. Geographically, they are the extreme outliers of Earth-6.
Unlike the massive, contiguous landmasses of the other empires, Oceania is a decentralized network of island states and archipelagos.
Economically, they entered the Age of Pax at a severe disadvantage.
The historical data indicates they exhausted their natural resource reserves supplying their allies during the authority wars.
Lacking the industrial base of Asia or the agricultural yield of the Americas, they had to pivot their entire geopolitical strategy toward logistics and geography.
They control the maritime corridors.
If the Asian coalition wants to ship dark titanium to the Separatist Union, or if Europa wants to import biopharmaceuticals from South America, those ships have to navigate oceanic waters.
But they didn't just set up toll booths. If we connect this to the bigger picture, they weaponized their geography through bureaucratic and biological ingenuity.
The role of their quarantine office is a brilliant piece of asymmetrical warfare.
Recognizing their inability to win a conventional war of attrition, Oceania restructured its defense doctrine entirely around biosecurity law.
The quarantine office possesses overriding legal authority to seal ports, impound cargo vessels, and isolate entire maritime regions under the auspices of public health.
This allows Oceania to execute devastating economic blockades and paralyze global supply chains without ever formally declaring hostilities.
It provides them with absolute plausible deniability. We aren't blockading your fleet, we are simply enforcing a mandatory 6-month quarantine due to an anomalous algae bloom.
It's brilliant.
And they back up this legal framework with the Altered Marine Life Program. The ecological engineering here is terrifying.
They have bioengineered the coral reefs to degrade foreign hulls.
And they have bred deep-water predators to aggressively target military submersibles.
They have turned the actual ocean ecosystem into a hostile, active defense grid.
It is an unparalleled strategy of area denial.
They have altered the cost-benefit analysis of invasion so drastically that the continental empires view naval assault as logistically impossible.
However, this defensive security does not solve their resource deficit. Oceania's economy is entirely dependent on what the texts call the Trinity trade.
Because they lack raw materials and scale, they are locked into a hyper-dependent relationship with their neighbors.
They rely on the Asian coalition for heavy manufacturing and industrial goods.
And they rely on Pax Africana for agricultural imports and geopolitical stability.
If those supply lines falter, Oceania starves.
This macroeconomic reality filters down into the daily psychology of the oceanic citizen.
The cultural data describes a society characterized by coastal elegance, highly efficient urban planning, advanced marine textiles, and a pristine standard of living.
Yet this is underpinned by a pervasive practical anxiety.
The populace is acutely aware that their high standard of living is entirely reliant on the uninterrupted flow of global shipping.
You see it reflected in their media consumption.
Yes. The most popular entertainment programs in Oceania are disaster response documentaries and maritime logistics dramas.
Their culture is a constant reminder that they live in a tropical paradise surrounded by weaponized waters, entirely dependent on the punctuality of cargo freighters.
It requires a highly disciplined, pragmatic populace. They are a society surviving on the margins of the continental giants.
But to examine a society that has achieved true internal equilibrium, we must look to the continent that stabilized earliest following the authority wars.
We must turn to Pax Africana.
Pax Africana is the legacy of Zikara Leofidor, currently overseen by her daughter, Zizizi Jefferson, the champion of Pax.
While other continents were embroiled in genetic purges or building predictive AI networks, Africa focused on unified infrastructure and institutional durability.
And the operational center of this stability is their capital, Euphoria.
The urban planning of Euphoria represents a radical departure from the fortified capitals of the other empires.
Situated at the nexus of the continent's major biomes, its design philosophy is rooted in civic transparency.
The core of the city is the Forum of Unity, constructed in concentric rings, and the architectural centerpiece is the oculus above the Forum.
It is completely open to the sky.
The legislative body conducts its sessions exposed to the elements. The texts note this is a deliberate, symbolic rejection of backroom deals and shadowed politics.
If it rains during a trade debate, they get wet.
Surrounding this is a massive civic plaza where public protest is not only legal, but structurally integrated into the political process.
It is a city designed to facilitate human friction, rather than suppress it.
And this emphasis on engagement extends to their residency policies. Euphoria is not populated by a static elite.
To live in the capital, citizens from across Pax Africana must participate in the civic lottery.
This system allocates multi-year residency terms based on vocational merit. Scholars, engineers, agricultural specialists.
A citizen wins a term, contributes to the capital's intellectual and economic output for 5 to 12 years, and is then legally required to return to their home province.
It is a brilliantly designed system to prevent the calcification of power.
The capital is constantly refreshed with new perspectives.
And the provinces continuously receive an influx of highly trained professionals returning from Euphoria.
It creates the most educated, prosperous, and politically engaged citizenry on Earth-6.
But, as with any system that attempts to regulate human ambition, there are subversions. The documents detail significant black market activity within Euphoria.
Primarily driven by the Harbor Shadow Network and the Dream Market.
Pax Africana maintains stringent regulations on chemical and biological enhancements to prioritize baseline psychological wellness.
Consequently, an illicit market emerged to circumvent these laws.
Yeah.
The Harbor Shadow Network utilizes cryptographic manipulation of the shipping manifest to smuggle contraband into the capital.
And the primary commodities distributed through the Dream Market are highly advanced, engineered neuroenhancers.
These aren't standard narcotics. They are biological hacking tools.
Citizens who have won the civic lottery and tasted the utopian life in Euphoria often refuse to leave when their term expires.
They purchase these neuroenhancers to artificially rewrite their cognitive pathways.
Essentially tricking the biometric censuses into extending their residency, or completely swapping identity profiles to avoid deportation back to the provinces.
It shows that even in a transparent society, the proximity to absolute comfort generates deep corruption.
Furthermore, the geopolitical stability of Pax Africana makes it the primary target for foreign espionage.
The intelligence briefings indicate the Asian coalition operates extensive influence cells within the continent,
funding technological incubators designed to subtly shift economic reliance toward coalition standards.
Simultaneously, the separatist union funnels resources into fringe advocacy groups, attempting to agitate regional divisions and fracture the continent's unity.
Pax Africana is engaged in a perpetual, silent war of ideological defense.
Despite the espionage and the biological black markets, it remains the most stable anchor on the planet.
Which brings us to the ultimate objective of this deep dive. We have analyzed the logistical realities, the material sciences, and the socio-political structures of these 6 empires.
Now we have to evaluate them from the perspective of a civilian and make a choice.
If you were dropped onto Earth-6 in the year 2026, where are you establishing your life? Let's review the parameters.
It requires a calculation of acceptable risk versus desired reward. In the American Union, you gain access to post-scarcity energy and environmental perfection.
But only if you willingly submit to a transactionally weaponized social credit system, and you face existential threat if you possess mutant genetics.
The Separatist Union offers the ultimate biological upward mobility, the potential to achieve superhuman status.
But the entry fee is surviving the lethal state-mandated violence of the culling.
The Asian coalition guarantees absolute physical security and economic dominance.
But you sacrifice your cognitive privacy to an omnipresent, predictive AI and live at the whims of an autocratic god king.
Oceania provides a high standard of living and a profound sense of communal purpose.
But your entire existence is precariously balanced on the edge of global supply chain disruptions and biosecurity warfare.
Europa offers elite education, unparalleled aesthetic luxury, and protection from the physical brutality of the outside world.
But you exist strictly as a subordinate caste, and you must accept the high probability that your contentment is being artificially manufactured by aristocratic telepaths.
Finally, Pax Africana offers genuine civic engagement, political transparency, and the highest genuine happiness index.
But access to its core benefits is restricted by a lottery, and the society is under constant covert siege from every other global power. So what does this all mean?
Looking at the data, I am planting my flag in Pax Africana.
Really?
Yeah. Specifically, I would play the odds on the civic lottery for Euphoria. The operational transparency of an open-air legislature and the integration of legal protest into the civic structure appeals to me. It is the most human-centric model.
It feels like the only socio-political model that still values human agency as a feature rather than a bug. If I didn't win the lottery, my secondary choice would be Oceania. I think the practical anxiety of supply chain management is a fair trade for the coastal efficiency and the fact that you aren't living under the immediate boot of a meta dictator.
Based on your logistical analysis, where do you construct your ideal life?
My decision prioritizes the acquisition of knowledge and the avoidance of direct ideological conflict. Therefore, I would seek integration into Europa,
Into the post-human aristocracy.
specifically aiming for an administrative role within Olympus. The ethical implications of telepathic pacification are profound, yes. However, the opportunity to observe and analyze 22nd century technological deployment firsthand within a society insulated from conventional warfare is strategically invaluable, a highly analytical approach.
If the post-human aristocracy proved too invasive, my alternative would be the neutral state of Panama. It offers no centralized protection, but it provides the unparalleled ability to interface with the diplomatic and economic currents of all six empires without being legally bound to their internal extremisms.
And for you listening, you have heard the breakdowns. You understand the physics of Aetherium, the psychology of the Oculus Imperium, and the brutal mechanics of the Rule of Two. Which set of compromises aligns with your survival strategy?
Are you hacking your social score in the Americas? Or are you preparing for the Colosseum in Sela?
It is a complex socio-political puzzle.
But as you evaluate these paradigms, there's one final overarching vulnerability in the Earth-6 framework that warrants deep consideration.
The foundational infrastructure.
Yes. Think about the core infrastructure we have discussed today. In our reality, stability is built on decentralized power grids, codified legal frameworks, and massive bureaucratic redundancies.
On Earth-6, the structural integrity of human civilization is frequently reliant on the biology and psychology of single, solitary individuals.
That is the glaring red flag.
Yeah.
Adam doesn't just manage the power grid, he is the power grid.
Exactly. Anthony Garr is the singular water treatment facility for a hemisphere.
Midas Montero prevents the balkanization of the largest continent on Earth purely through the velocity of his own ambition.
Dentalian is the sole gatekeeper of the temporal technology holding Europa aloft.
Omegadon physically houses the genetic future of his empire in his own DNA.
So the terrifying question is, what happens to a global civilization when its foundational infrastructure can have a bad day?
Catch a cold.
Or simply decide to turn the lights off?
When the critical infrastructure of global civilization is completely tethered to the biological and emotional volatility of gods, does that civilization possess any genuine durability?
Or is it simply a temporary, precarious arrangement, constantly hovering one bad day away from total, unrecoverable collapse?
Does a society built on the shoulders of gods have any real foundation at all?
That is the exact kind of systemic vulnerability that makes this timeline so fascinating to dissect. Thank you for joining us on this exhaustive analysis of Earth-6. Keep examining the structures around you, paying close attention to the single points of failure in your own systems. We will see you on the next deep dive.